Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reign of Troy. It is the Carcast after USC's 55-17 win over the Colorado Buffaloes at the Coliseum on a Friday night. The Trojans now run their record to 9-1, and they will be in the top 10 going into the Rose Bowl next week against UCLA. But tonight, all about the win over Colorado. We're going to talk about it, give you our first reactions, and so much more. As always, you can follow us over on social media. I am at MichaelCastFS. My co-host Alicia Artola is at Penguin of Troy. You can follow the show at Reign of Troy. You can follow us over on YouTube and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Overcast, wherever you can find a podcast. We are there. But of course, if you're joined with us live here on YouTube, welcome and have your say in the chat. Pop in your thoughts, and we'll have some fun here on a late Friday night. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host, Alicia Artola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back for another Carcast. USC got the job done after a first quarter in which they were outscored 3-2.
Just like we all predicted. I mean, we were talking. Your score prediction was very close.
I was heated.
Yeah,
heated at one point in the game,
which I think is really funny to me. That like this score, the score that we saw, was well within the realms of what we predicted for this game, and yet the way this game played out is, I think, the opposite of what you and I would have predicted for what this game would have played out as. This was a indescribable game. Like, I hope this is a game that we talk about in 5 years. Like, remember that Colorado game, that first quarter that was the most miserable first quarter of football that I've ever seen? Remember that? Yeah, that's what this game was.
Yikes. Yeah, it was quite the interesting game for the Trojans. SC ultimately gets the win, 55-17. We talked about it going in. This game would not matter except for two things. One, USC wins. They did win. And number two, they stayed healthy. And oh my God, that did not happen.
Yeah.
Did not happen.
Yeah.
Travis Dye, if you somehow missed the game, left in the second quarter, amassed 26 rushing yards in the first half, but the last of those yards came on a rough-looking run in which he bent over backwards. He left the game. He was there in the second half after being carted off, seemingly with a cast on his looked like his left leg, below the knee, which. Do with that information what you will. Did not look good. He was quite the gut-wrenching scene for SC. And I put on Twitter, if you had a list of the guys you could not lose, Travis Dye is like top 2 or 3, right? Like,
yeah,
you couldn't lose him. And SC ultimately loses him in the game before all the big games.
Yeah, and I think you can tell the impact of that injury by the way that everybody on USC sideline, by the way that Colorado players were coming over to wish him well. I saw somebody on Twitter compare it to when Drake London got injured, and it was that kind of just like deflation of the Coliseum, and just you could see the team react to how important that player was. And it's even more incredible because Travis Dye was not a Trojan this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
The impact that he's had on this team in a leadership role, in a on the field role, has been gigantic. And you could see that from the way that the players and the coaches and the fans reacted to him going down that way. It's extremely unfortunate. It's extremely demoralizing. It's sad from a USC perspective because Travis Dye was so important to what USC wants to do for the rest of the season. It's sad from a Travis Dye perspective because he won't get to we assume he won't get to finish the season. It's sad from a Travis Dye perspective because he's supposed to be preparing for the NFL this spring. And based on what we saw from that injury, his NFL preparation is going to be potentially screwed up as well. And so it is heart-wrenching. It was heart-wrenching to see him getting carted off the field. And, I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat talk about like, yeah, well, you have Austin Jones, you have Darwin Barlow, you have Relief Brown. Absolutely, you have those guys, but none of those guys match up to the complete package that Travis Dye was. All of those guys can run, but none of them can pass block the way that Travis Dye could pass block. And those aren't necessarily like the leaders that Travis Dye was for this team. So I don't think you need to downplay the importance of Travis Dye while also pointing out the potential that USC has from the other running backs. Absolutely, those guys. And we saw today, Austin Jones stepped up in a big way. We saw Darwin Barlow get his chance. We saw Relief Brown show his stuff. So, yeah, you have guys there, but none of them are Travis Dye.
Yeah, I think it's been telling, if nothing else, the confidence that the coaching staff has in Travis Dye in the number of reps he's gotten compared to everybody else. Early on in the year, Austin Jones was tit for tat with Dye on yardage and yards per carry and all that. And then his playing time got dialed back considerably. And we talked about it going back to the no blocking, no Rocky thing. And it did check out, right? Like Austin Jones kind of struggled with pass blocking and run blocking and what he needs to do on that front. And I think that he has struggled to find holes as well in the times that he's gone in there because he's struggled to really get in a rhythm with limited action.
Less decisive than Dye.
Yeah, but he looked really good tonight. I thought he looked as good as tonight as he has all year. Relief Brown looked incredible tonight at times. Still did the thing where he dances around a little bit, and that might be frustrating for a couple of plays, but it's going to absolutely win you over when he's got like a long of 19 that he had tonight in the run game and the pass game. He scored on that big long touchdown pass from Miller Moss. So yes, SC's got talent there, but Travis Dye was such a reliable option and such a stalwart of this team that you're going to miss him if this thing ends up being as serious as it looks.
Well, yeah.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's something that he wakes up tomorrow and feels totally fine, and they do an MRI and there's no damage or whatever. But
I want some of what you're having.
I'm just saying, like I don't know. We're gonna have to see what happens with that. But yeah, I think it absolutely is a big loss for the Trojans going forward. Even though they do have some depth guys that you could actually feel some confidence in. It's kind of a mixture of both of those things. But yeah, going into this game, we talked about the stay healthy and get the win, and hopefully build up some confidence in things like game control and like looking like you can beat Colorado similarly to what Oregon, UCLA, and even TCU. I forget that TCU played them in week 1. Close to what those guys did. And SC seemingly all did that tonight.
Yeah, I think if you want to look at like silver linings around the running back situation, is we did see as soon as Dye went out, there was a change in philosophy from the way that the running backs were used. And I think that we clearly know that Travis Dye is the best pass blocking running back that USC has. My hope would be that USC understands that Austin Jones and Relief Brown and maybe Darwin Barlow. We haven't seen Darwin Barlow in those situations as often, but my hope would be that they recognize that yes, these guys, their strength is not pass blocking, so we're going to use them as outlets, and we saw that over and over and over again in the second half after Travis Dye went out. We didn't see them ask Austin Jones to pass block. We saw them
eight catches tonight between those three.
Yeah, they asked him to split out and be an outlet for Caleb Williams, and that worked very, very well for USC. I thought it even improved the offense, because one of my complaints about the first half was that USC seemed to be forcing the longer passing game, the long developing passing game. They didn't really have a lot of routes that were in the shorter range, and having the running back be an outlet for Caleb Williams to me, helped a lot, actually, helped move the ball a little bit more. So if you want a silver lining, it's that if USC doesn't want to run the ball anyways, which is a constant complaint that I have, like using the running backs as part of the passing game could ultimately be a plus for this offense. Like that's my silver lining that I can take from needing to see more of Austin Jones and certainly Raleigh Brown in this offense.
When was the last time SC had major running back injuries stuff that happened? You remember certain year?
I mean, 2019 when they turned to Amon-Ra St. Brown as a running back.
Well, yes, but the other part of it is that Graham Harrell offense. The best month, the best month of Graham Harrell's tenure ever was the 1 month that he decided, I'm not going to piddle fart around with the run. I'm just going to go all in on the pass. Screw it. Let's just see what happens. I'm going to go full air raid and truly buy into it. And when he did that, SC suddenly became an explosive offense for 1 month. This is a completely different situation, but I could see a way in which you can find a silver lining on attacking things differently. You talk about how the running backs are used in the passing game. I agree. At the same time, four of the 8 passing plays that were caught by running backs tonight were from Miller Moss late in the game. So
yes,
I think.
Can we talk for a second about the little rainbow throw that he throws on a screen? Because chef's kiss, love it. That kid can throw a screen. I don't know what else he can do, but he can throw a screen.
Quite a little bit of hang time on those sticks for sure. But yeah, it was quite the night from SC on the ground. All told, 185 yards. Felt like more than that to me, but I think that's just because of the efficiency of the guys that were running in the second half. Austin Jones finishes with 74 yards, averaging 6.7 a pop. Raleigh Brown, 52 yards, long of 19, 7.4 yards per carry. And Darwin Barlow is seemingly his first action since the Rice game. 5 carries and 41 yards, including a late garbage time touchdown, the garbage time touchdown that puts the Trojans over the 50-point mark. It sort of ruins my prediction, but that's fine. If you missed our preview episode, I predicted SC to win 47-17.
Which is already ruined.
And you joked, like, how is SC going to score 47? 47's a weird score. Well, Alicia, I don't know. Maybe there was a weird safety early on in the game. SC was on pace to win 47-17. Then there's a weird, fake 2-point conversion that they get. Completely sort of ruins it. Looks like SC is going to win 48-17. But Barlow right there at the end gets the touchdown in there. But I mentioned before I wanted to compare SC beating Colorado 55-17 and sort of see how that compares to the other teams, Oregon, UCLA, TCU. They've all played Colorado. So SC scored the most points of any of those teams. TCU scored 38. SC scores 55. UCLA 45, Oregon 49. In terms of the points allowed, SC allowed the most points at 17, tied with UCLA, but 17, 13, and 10, all in the same realm. A game that includes garbage time, I don't care about that. No big deal. I think, if anything, the thing you can hold your hat on is SC held Colorado to 259 total yards tonight. Even if the defense was sort of shaky at times, 259 yards, one of their fewest outputs of the season, the lowest of any of those top-ranked teams to play Colorado. TCU held them to 348, UCLA 309, Oregon 367, and the Trojans 259 per play average. Would have the Bruins leading that 4.07, by the way. Colorado tonight, 4.6 yards per play.
Yeah, and I don't even think the defense was shaky all that much. I thought they were the only good thing about the first quarter for USC.
I mean, it helped that JT Strout look absolutely inept.
Strout, he's just not a good quarterback,
No.
so we knew that coming in. But Tuli Tuipulotu looked as dominant as you want a player of Tuipulotu's stature to look against Colorado. We saw Corey Foreman get in there and disrupt some plays. Really nice to see him pop off in this game.
Tuli had another great night.
Yeah, you got to pop off sometime, and this would be a really good night to see both of those guys be involved. Yeah, there were a couple plays I think where there was breakdowns, but I think that with this defense, the way that this defense operates, you're always going to have a handful of plays they're just gonna be feast or famine on there, that the other team's going to feast. I thought we saw more of USC's defense keeping Colorado to famine in this game, and really, the touchdown that Colorado gets is late. Tuli Tuipulotu isn't on the field for some reason during that drive. I will choose to believe that it's because it was almost garbage time. I don't want to think about life where there was a reason for him to be off the field. I don't know.
There's been some situational stuff where he's come off at times, but
I don't know. I don't know if I would have taken Tuli Tuipulotu off the field for that particular
I'm just saying,
situation.
It's happened before.
Yeah. So, I thought that the defense held up for the most part. The other touchdown that they give up is after a special teams blunder. So, I think that the defense did just fine. And we said coming into the game, if they hold them under 20 points, we'll be happy. And I think the way that this played out, especially with the defense getting a safety, as bad as Strout was on that safety play, getting that safety and getting the turnovers that they got, setting up another USC touchdown with a fumble recovery in deep in the territory. Like, I think it worked out for USC's defense in this game. The problem in this game really was that USC's offense had such a bad first quarter that it made everything look shakier for the defense, when if USC had scored, a touchdown on their first 3 possessions and the defense played exactly the way they did, we wouldn't really be talking about like, oh no, there's the defense. Like, it would just be like, sometimes you give up a play.
I think any talk about the defense being, a liability in this game is strictly a
reflection
of the previous games. Raylan Goforth comes back. It's 4 tackles in his return after missing a few. That was big for SC. Of course, no Eric Gentry. On the offensive side of the ball, Jordan Addison comes back and ends up not having a huge role on offense, but I don't think that's a big deal. It's no secret SC's biggest game of the year is 8 days away.
Yeah.
Jordan Addison hasn't played in a month. It makes sense to sort of slowly bring him back. He had 2 targets, 1 catch for 2 yards tonight, but I don't think that's a problem. The biggest thing is just getting him healthy, and just knowing that he was able to be out on the field, I think was the biggest win for SC in that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think going into the game, we would have said put him on a pitch count.
Yeah.
See if he can make some plays. There was a play where he was available in the end zone, and Caleb Williams just missed him. So he could have had a touchdown in this game in theory. And yeah, when you've got Kyle Ford playing the way he did, when you've got Taj Washington available, when you've got Brendan Rice eventually deciding to make some plays, then you didn't really need Jordan Addison in this game. I think in the first quarter, what you needed more than Jordan Addison was just Brendan Rice to make some catches, the simple catches instead of the spectacular.
Let's talk about. We got a question in the chat from Touchdown. Did Mario Williams play? No, he did not. He came out in warmups, but did not play. He was
in street clothes.
In street clothes after that. But let's talk about Brendan Rice's game. 3 catches, 70 yards. If you just watch those 3 catches for 70 yards, you think, oh, great. He had a productive night, including a long touchdown pass that was a beautiful pass from Caleb Williams in the second quarter. On a post, he uses his body to catch the ball, win his positioning, get over the goal line. Exactly what you want to see. But then early on in the game, a couple of key drops. One of those on a sort of hand fight for the ball that ended up being an interception where you'd like to hope that someone of Brendan Rice's size and strength could kind of either, if nothing else, defend that ball away on a deep ball that was slightly underthrown by Caleb Williams, or wrangle it back and take it himself. On the first drive of the game, he drops a ball on a little short pass to the flat. I don't know. It was a mixed bag performance from Brendan Rice, and it's one of those where you're like, why is he not getting, or why is SC not putting out Kyle Ford more often when Kyle Ford seemingly, as the season has gone on, has gotten better and better and better. We saw him against Arizona. He looked really good. He looked really good tonight. 3 catches for 73 yards. 2 of those back-to-back third down conversions where he was like sort of the outlet man, late on to just catch it and just run with nobody around him. But yeah, Brendan Rice up and down, had his moments, didn't have his moments at the same time. Still waiting for him to sort of put it all together.
Yeah, I get why they have him out there, because what he did later in the game is exactly why they had him out there. He made a really great catch on the sideline. He had that touchdown catch. So, like, I see it. My problem is that this offense, they're running into a little bit of a trend here where, like, when things are bad, they're just like really bad and they're out of sorts and everything like that. And
Yeah.
I think that having a player on the field who contributes so clearly to being out of sorts, it makes me worry, to be honest, because I don't know that I can depend on Brendan Rice, because from one play to the next, you might get a spectacular catch or you might get a drop. And that's really frustrating. There were other drops in this game, but I think they were more about the throw than the receiver, where Brendan Rice, like, there was just no excuse to drop what he did.
Taj had a drop where it looked like
it was behind him, and it might have
behind
been
him, and they talked about in the broadcast that Caleb Williams was talking about, made it look like it was a mix-up of what he was going to do on the route.
Yeah, so maybe there's sort of miscommunication there, but I just don't think we've seen that necessarily from Kyle Ford. Kyle Ford has been more reliable.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see a lot of Michael Jackson in this game, and I continue to want to see more from him. Didn't see a lot of Kyron Hudson in this game. I would like to see more from him. So when there are other guys in the pecking order who are fighting for playing time and touches and all that kind of stuff, like, I think Brendan Rice needs to be more consistent to earn that, right? I don't know. Caleb didn't seem deterred from targeting him during the game, and they didn't seem deterred from having him in there. So
yeah, he had the most targets tonight with 6. But I think the interesting thing for me is that it is SC's deepest unit by far, is the receiving core, right? SC has had their top 2 guys out, and there's still dudes that you barely even see. Like, like they could still go all the way down to CJ Williams and Kyron Hudson and Terrell Bynum and all these guys who didn't get a catch tonight. Well, CJ Williams got 2 catches, but like Kyron Hudson didn't see the ball tonight. Neither did Terrell Bynum. But you put all this stuff together. You have all these receivers, and to me, like, you would think that it sort of has the smallest margin of error. But it seems that, and I don't want to just pick on Brendan Rice here, because he made some fantastic plays tonight.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I think that there's some other guys who I'd like to see get a little bit more of an opportunity, like Kyle Ford. Speaking more about the offense, Caleb Williams, kind of a mixed bag performance, and that's only because we kind of have high standards for him, right? Like,
he can't be completing 50%. I'm sorry.
He's forced us to have high standards.
Yeah,
right?
My standards are very high for Caleb Williams, and I don't think that it's acceptable for him to complete 54% of his passes.
Yeah, 14 of 26, 268, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. The pick earlier in the game, we talked about it on the deep ball to Brendan Rice,
which is underthrown.
He's underthrown. It's on Caleb Williams. At the same time, it's one of those things where you'd like the receiver to make sure that doesn't happen, but it's on Caleb Williams. It's a deep ball. If you're gonna throw a pick on a deep ball, I guess. Not the biggest crime in the world, especially when he's had a 30-something to 2
of the season,
touchdown to interception ratio. It's worthless to bag on him for the pick, but he was pretty errant early on. Yeah. But he settled down. The entire offense settled down after the 8 yards that they got in the first quarter. 268 yards all told, 3 touchdowns, a couple of runs. It was the shovel pass to Austin Jones. It's the one that you're going to remember. Going into the closed end of the Coliseum in the third quarter, takes two little steps, does the little no look shovel pass a la Patrick Mahomes, and it was brilliant because Austin Jones knew what he was going to do, got it, ran into the end zone with a little jump at the end, semi hurdle, and it was a hell of a highlight reel play, and that play is going to be on a loop for the next 24 hours. So all the voters get to see that thing and not highlights of the first quarter.
Yeah, I legitimately in the moment thought that the ball had been punched out of his hand and that it had flown into Austin Jones's hands on accident. I still don't. My brain cannot comprehend. It's fitting that you bring up Patrick Mahomes. We brought up Patrick Mahomes a couple of times now in relation to Caleb Williams. But it's an impossible comparison not to make. It's the same kind of just mind-blowing, did he even try that kind of play that Caleb Williams is capable of doing? And that is the gift that USC has. USC has a quarterback who is capable of doing that and who is capable of scoring 2 touchdowns with his legs by faking a handoff so beautifully that everybody is fooled and he just sort of walks into the end zone. He can do that kind of thing. He's very, 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 very good. Mm-hmm. My complaint about Caleb Williams in this game is part Caleb Williams and also part Lincoln Riley, because I think it became clear at a certain point that Caleb wasn't, in terms of passing, at his sharpest. I thought that the pass rush was getting to him a little bit. I thought he was having to run around a little bit too much to create time. And I wanted to see USC adjust to that and say, okay, we're going to run some short passing concepts. And it felt like every single play needed 10 seconds to evolve. And my worry is that, Colorado does not have a good pass rush. They had 3 sacks in this game. That is not a good sign because the escapism that we've seen from Caleb Williams all year, that works against a lot of teams, but eventually you're going to run into a team that has an elite pass rusher who is going to trip you or going to get you down. You're not going to be able to extend a play for 10 seconds. And I want to see USC adjust to that a little bit more clearly. And that's kind of why I brought up the running back thing, because when the outlet was there from the running back position, we saw him going to that constantly. Mm-hmm. And that's not something we saw earlier in the game. We didn't see those available shorter outlet routes. And it's hard to say because you don't have an all 22 or anything like that. You're limited from what we can see on the TV, but you can see pretty much from the line of scrimmage almost to the first down marker, right? And there's literally no red shirts there. There's no Cardinal shirts there. So USC isn't running routes that are giving Caleb an opportunity shorter. And so I think he was trying to force it a little bit more, having to run around a little bit more. And I think that hurt his performance. I would like to see Lincoln. It's a balance though, because he's so good and I get trusting him. I wish Lincoln would trust him less sometimes. Does that make sense?
I get what you're saying, but when you can make the plays that Caleb Williams can do,
just let him roll.
You're gonna earn that trust. And Lincoln Riley has a great history of having quarterbacks to trust and knowing when to trust those guys. So I'm going to lean on that to work out in that sense. Yeah, I think Caleb Williams was fine tonight. He struggled early on. I agree that it looked like there were a lot of like all of those sacks were like coverage sacks.
Yeah.
A couple of them, the pocket just sort of swallowed up because there was nobody else. No way for him to get out of the pocket and couldn't find anyone in time. But yeah, if he could find an outlet a little bit quicker, maybe than always looking downfield or something. I think that would help.
Where are the tight ends?
I do think that at the same time, it's like of all the things wrong with SC's offense, I think that it's maybe not the biggest glaring issue. Colorado, you would think though, would not be one of the defenses that would give SC's passing game trouble. You would hope that the Lincoln Riley offense, being predicated on finding receivers in space, would continue to do that. And it wasn't there at times tonight. So you want to get that fixed. And I have faith that that'll be fixed given how SC's offense has been, especially in the second half. We saw them in the big game so far.
They scored 55 points. So.
Yeah, they scored 55 points. And how they looked against Utah. So if they can do that against Utah, I think they'll be just fine next week against UCLA. We'll have to see, of course. Want to take a quick moment here to change gears and start to open up the mailbag. So if you got a question here on YouTube, be sure to pop it in the chat, and then we'll run through these. We've been starring a bunch of them so we can get back to them. All right, let's go to Josh, who says, even putting up 55 points, losing die after that abysmal first half, do you think SC falls in the rankings? No, I don't think so at all. I don't think a lot of the pollsters are watching this game in totality, if anything. I think a lot of them are going to look at the score, look at the highlights. Considering on the East Coast, this game kicked off at 9:30 on a Friday night. Like, this was a good game to have on a Friday night at 9:30 for SC's sake, especially because the score looks good.
Yeah, 55-17. The thing is that there are college football games every single weekend where the first quarter is a little wonky.
Yeah.
And then you look at it and like it's 55-17.
Michigan
had that with Rutgers
right?
last week. Yeah. So I do think that first quarter highlighted some of the concerns that people have in general about USC. And I think that we're going to talk about that with some questions that are coming up regarding the UCLA game. But when it comes down to it, I would hope most pollsters understand that like a weird first quarter doesn't negate a 55-17 win. It was a 55-17 win. And really once USC, it was a flip switched and a switch flipped, sorry. And they just ran with it and it wasn't close at that point. So yeah. I think this happens too often in college football for USC to get knocked unless like UCLA completely blows out Arizona and then it's like but there's been a whole week of conversation about whether or not UCLA is being underrated relative to USC. So like I could see an adjustment based on that conversation more than an adjustment based on this game.
No. So the only way I could see something happening is if there was a team below them moving up, and UCLA is rather close in the AP poll, but like I don't think UCLA is going to do something against Arizona when SC's playing Colorado. Both the teams on the bottom end of the Pac-12, like those are not going to be the ones that convince people to change their rankings. I
also think UCLA is not necessarily. I mean, if UCLA completely blows out Arizona, I will give them all the props. I think Arizona's offense is good enough to give UCLA. I don't think UCLA is going to lose to Arizona, but there's a good chance that Arizona gives them a little bit of a game. So there's a lot that still has to go into that.
Yeah, I think the most likely scenario is that someone above SC loses, then SC moves up. And who would that be? Probably like TCU playing Texas.
Or Alabama beating Ole Miss and then jumping USC. Arguably, maybe. It's hard to say.
I wouldn't see that either. Cameron says, "What does USC do now with the running back committee if Travis Dye is out for the season?" Yeah, the thing about Dye is we sort of look at it and fear that he's out for the season, right? But like it doesn't look good. But
I mean, Jordan Addison
we don't know that. Yeah, we don't know that for sure. The Jordan Addison thing, I think, probably looked worse in the moment. Albeit at the, and I'm talking about like just the play itself.
It looked pretty bad for Dye.
Yes, but the way Dye was carted off and had in tears and the whole bit,
I had an air cast
that
on
looked
him.
That looked more serious for sure.
But he's out. He's done. I mean, I know you're being responsible because we don't have that information.
I think we should be responsible. Absolutely. The point is, what does SC do with the running back committee? It's what you saw in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be Austin Jones, and Raleek Brown and Darwin Barlow sprinkled in.
Yeah, I think Austin Jones is probably just the go-to guy now, and you'll get Raleek Brown as the sort of number 2 alternate. And I would personally like to see more of Darwin Barlow, but just the way that we've seen the rotation from USC's running backs this season is so Kenny just let us know in the chat that Lincoln Riley has confirmed that Travis Dye is out for the season, which is essentially
this is the problem with doing a live
right
show
after the game. Well, there's
before we can look at the press conference stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we practically knew that. Now it's just official. But Austin Jones is the guy, and I would expect to see sprinklings of Raleek Brown and then sprinklings of Darwin Barlow. But I would, just based on the way that Travis Dye was used, I'm gonna guess it's just gonna be Austin Jones like elevated to RB1, and that RB1 will be the one we see the most of. It's not going to be one drive here, one drive there, one drive there. I think we're just going to see Austin Jones.
Yeah, I still think Raleek Brown is going to be used. This is all the reason in the world to go all in on using Raleek Brown as an energizer for this offense, whether it be in the backfield or split out wide. Something. There's no need to hold him back. There's no need to. You don't have to worry about splitting reps with him or anything like that, or about using him and then that taking away reps from Travis Dye. Like Travis Dye is not in the picture. You can use Raleek Brown however you want to use him. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that part goes into it. Big T37 says, did Tuli Tuipulotu get hurt? He didn't play in the second half. He was out there in the second half at one point.
Yeah. It was in that when we noticed it was that drive that Colorado scored the touchdown on.
Yeah, I didn't see anything on about an injury there.
Well, Tuli Tuipulotu was part of the press conference after the game with Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley. So he obviously wasn't badly injured.
I think that's one of the situations where he's been taken out before for situational reasons, and then he took back the national lead in sacks. He can take off the second half. He plays in the second half against Colorado.
By the time that, if they took him out, it was 5 minutes ish left in the third quarter, and USC was up by 26 or something like that. I could understand if they wanted to get a look at the other guys they have on that defense.
He did not need to be in there in every play.
No, I mean I would have liked him to, but he didn't need to.
Yeah. Josh says, do you think the 2-point and backflip was the moment SC found its momentum?
It was the fumble.
Yeah, it was the fumble in the second quarter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but the backflip was fun.
The backflip was fun, but that was in the third quarter, well after I think SC sort of blew this one open. But yeah, SC allows the field goal to go down 3-2. They come back with a touchdown drive to go up 9-3, and then immediately get the fumble. The fumble sets up the short drive, and that's what sort of jump starts the rest of that 24-0 second quarter for the Trojans there.
Yeah, at that point, that USC is full steam ahead at that point. The touchdown was I think the start of that turning point, but Colorado could have gone down the field and scored a field goal or a touchdown or something like that on that drive and reset things a little bit. And the fact that they got that turnover, setting USC up in the red zone so quickly, it was over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marcus says, do you think that with the limited number of fans in the stadium, it makes it harder to play in? The fans need to step up. Is this about the renovations and how the capacity is lower?
No, I think it was the Friday night game and people not turning up to watch USC play Colorado, probably.
I'm of the mindset. I know there's a million things. I've said this before. I know there's a million things that go on in LA, and I'm not going to be the one to I'm not going to, chastise SC when the Dodgers have this problem, and every team in LA has the problem of not being able to fill their stadium.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's 15 million people within a 2-hour drive of the Coliseum. I understand it's a Friday night, but SC's 8-1. Well, it can be a little more packed and a little more rowdy. Come on.
Yes, and I think I don't know that it's a reflection of the crowd that was or wasn't there, but I think that the game itself was sort of a reflection of how little USC, the team, the program, the fan base, how not seriously they took this game, which it was 55-17, and USC had the most miserable first quarter that I've ever seen from USC. So they were. I mean, there was certain this game was sort of a dead rubber. But yeah, you would like to see the crowd show up more, and I think it would be harder for the players to take the game unseriously if the crowd was G'd up for it and ready to go. So it's a sort of a chicken and egg.
Yeah, at the same time, I think SC has performed plenty up and down regardless of what the crowd, what the crowd situation
The crowd was not good at USC for that stretch during the Clay Helton era when they were completely unbeatable at home. So
right.
Again, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rama says, how does the eye test look right now with tonight's win and a record of 9-1? I think if you completely forget about the first quarter, I think the eye test was completely fine. The first quarter was abysmal when SC gets 8 yards of total offense. So it if you compartmentalize it into two different things, I think the eye test is fine. But
I think the eye test is sort of where we expected it to be, and that this offense is very, very good, but there will be times when they are out of sorts, and that will look ugly because this is year one and they will have their out of sorts moments.
Mm-hmm.
And the defense is what it is, what we've been talking about for weeks now, where this defense is vulnerable. They're dealing with injuries. They're dealing with stuff, but I thought they responded in this game when things could have gone very wrong for them, just in terms of the energy and momentum in this game. They had to hold on in a first quarter where USC's offense was doing literally nothing. And the defense that we saw against Arizona and Cal, we could have seen this defense completely just shatter. It doesn't, it helps that Colorado is as bad as they are, and that their quarterback got so afraid of Tuli Tuipulotu that he threw the ball away in the end zone when he didn't need to. That contributes, to be sure. But I thought that the defense didn't let this game get out of hand. And kudos to them for that, because they literally could have.
Yeah, and the power rankings of quarterbacks who looked absolutely inept in which SC has ever played them, JT Shrout is high on that list for me.
Yeah.
Reminds me of, was it Zach Maynard from Cal back in 2012?
Yeah. He was a better quarterback.
Yes, he's better than Shrout, which sort of says something. Yeah, I think for SC, yes, the eye test wasn't pretty early on, but I think when you rack up 531 yards in a game in which you had 8 in the first quarter, I think it's safe to say that they answered the bill there, answered the bell, and paid the bill on the first quarter issues. Dave the Greater says, what will you have to do to beat both UCLA and Notre Dame? It's get the timely stops when you need to and avoid the early struggles, right?
I think people are going to focus on the defense going into these games, and I get why. I think the defense will certainly have their role to play in the UCLA game, but for me, this game was very much a representation of how it's going to be USC's offense that determines whether or not USC wins the game against UCLA, because USC got away with a lot of stuff. USC can't get away with a first quarter like they had against Colorado against UCLA, because they will have fallen too far behind. They won't be in a 3-2 situation. USC's defense isn't capable of that against UCLA. USC's offense needs to be on it. They need to be prepared and they need to be ready to go. And I think, call this a trap game, even though it wasn't a trap game, but like call it that. It's the same mentality where it's just, I don't think USC took this seriously. I don't think they prepared very well for it. I think they came in and thought they'd just curb stomp Colorado, and they got punched in the mouth early and had to realize that like that wasn't going to be so easy. And the offense, I think, looked discombobulated. Even after they got things going, it's still the first touchdown drive is a slog and a half. Like, it takes multiple third and forever conversions. It takes getting over a bunch of penalties and all that kind of stuff. So they have to play a lot cleaner than we saw in this game. We know they can play a lot cleaner because we saw them put up 40 some odd points against Utah. We've seen them be utterly unstoppable against a lot of other teams. They just have to take it more seriously. They have to be more clicked on. And I think Caleb Williams in particular needs to be checked in. That is what USC needs to do in order to beat UCLA and then Notre Dame down the line. Because, yeah, you want your defense to get the stops, but also you need to be prepared to win a 65-60 shootout. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think so. I think looking at the drive chart of this game is crazy, because SC starts off early on punt, interception, punt, and like that's the kind of start you need to avoid against those good teams, because once you can, I think SC has been at their best this year when they jump out to a good lead and then just continue to score and take the pressure off their defense. The whole Gravedigger offense thing, that's what we saw early on in the season, right? Just bury teams early and put all the pressure on them early on. That didn't happen tonight, but SC responded by touchdown, field goal, downs on a drive in which they ran 10 plays on that drive, and then touchdown. Like, yes, that's the kind of pressure that you put on teams. And if you can continue to do that to the good teams, I think that's only going to help. How do you continue to score on offense? Just by being efficient and not having the drops, not having the errant throws on checkdowns, not having the pocket collapse around Caleb Williams when he can't escape. It's all about doing the little things on every play. Big T37 says, what happened to the towel guys? Don't see them anymore. We need to pick up our towel game. I saw them last week.
I didn't notice them tonight.
I didn't notice them tonight, but I've noticed them. I know I noticed them in the Arizona game.
Yeah, they were definitely there for the Arizona game. I don't
remember them for the Cal game, but I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I wasn't looking for them tonight.
Yeah, so, I certainly didn't notice them, and now that you bring them up, I've noticed them in every other game. So yeah, and I don't mind them personally, but
yeah. By the way, what's your towel guy opinion? Do you have one?
I don't care.
I think it's corny.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't care.
It's absolutely corny, and I can completely understand why SC people would not like it, given that the whole like Ed Kazarian thing at UCLA being the towel guy and all that stuff. At the same time, it's just not a hill worth dying on, being worried about. Yeah, it can be both those things at the same time. Raymond Murray says, how concerned should we be about the O-line struggles tonight? I wasn't concerned at all with the O-line struggles. I think the 3 sacks, I think most of those are coverage sacks. I was fine with the O-line.
I thought that in the run game was where I was most concerned. There were, and part of that might have been that Colorado was sort of biting on the handoff a little bit, and I thought that there were a couple stuffed runs that we haven't really seen blown up in the backfield as often this season. So that's a little bit concerning. I think it continues to be concerning that USC doesn't seem to have the health back on the offensive line. I think there was a question about whether or not Cortland Ford is injured. We just haven't heard anything from Cortland Ford in forever. If he played tonight, I didn't notice him. Bobby Haskins definitely got in the game in the second half, but he has been dealing with an injury. Mason Murphy is doing the best that they can. So the offensive line is still a little bit sort of, we're not sure what they are, but I don't know that they are my biggest concern at this point. I think that they are doing the best that they can. And like you said, some of the offensive line issues could be helped by the coverage, by the receivers getting open more quickly, or by USC running plays that didn't require such long dropbacks.
Yeah, David the Greater says if Miller Moss played the whole game, how many sacks would we have suffered? And is he mobile at all? I don't know. I go back to those were coverage sacks, and maybe Miller Moss. We just haven't seen him in, to use a Clay Helton-ism,
with
going up against live bullets enough, right? Like to the sense of I don't know how he'd react nearly as much on those plays where the receivers aren't getting open to the satisfaction of Caleb Williams. Maybe Miller Moss forces throws there and decides to throw out of those situations and make riskier throws. Maybe he looks to throw the ball away more. Maybe we know that Caleb Williams can extend the pocket more. So yeah, maybe it would end up in more sacks. I don't know. I think that either way, like I mentioned before, to me, it wasn't about a lack of protection tonight. It was about the receivers not necessarily always getting open more than anything. But
I think also we just see an entirely different offense. I think Lincoln Riley asks something different of Miller Moss than he does of Caleb Williams, and I think the leash is shorter on Miller Moss. So you'd probably see a lot more outlet passes, a lot more short passes, a lot more just get the ball out of your hands, rather than trusting that. And we've seen literally this entire season, Caleb can shimmy away from defenders, and so he has that leeway. I think that Miller Moss would not be given.
Yeah. SoCal Ninja says, can this defense stop UCLA's offense? Isn't that the freaking biggest question?
Well,
if it's the defense from the last three weeks, the Utah, Arizona, and Cal game, then surely not. I don't know that the defense tonight played well, but it was Colorado, so like, how much do you want to really put stock in that? Raylan Goforth came back and certainly helped out at linebacker, but this is still a defense that is relying on guys sort of playing beyond their capabilities a little bit. Like Tuasivi Nomura is a guy who probably shouldn't have all the responsibilities that he has at linebacker right now. And Goforth and Gentry can come back. That sort of takes a lot of those away. But I don't know. The answer is probably no. They can't stop UCLA's defense. It's just a matter of, can they contain them enough for SC's offense to at least hold serve?
Yeah, stop. I would say no. Limit, I would say probably not. But right now, at this very moment, if you told me that USC could contain UCLA to 35 points, I would break your hand off to take that deal. UCLA
I think so.
Their season low is 30 points. That was against Oregon. I wouldn't expect that. They're too good of a defense, especially their run game. Charbonnet is so good. DTR is exceptional, but I think that Charbonnet is the real danger man when we're talking about what USC should look at in terms of what Chip Kelly will want to do to USC's defense. So I think that you can sort of go in expecting it'll be 30 plus points. Could USC hold UCLA's offense to under 40 points? Maybe, if they get some turnovers. So, like, that's what you need. You need to get some turnovers so that UCLA doesn't score 40 points, because you can win this game if they score less than 40.
Yeah.
That should be your goal.
I think the key for SC next week is to force field goals and get turnovers. If you force a few field goals, force a couple of field goals, force a couple of turnovers, you will absolutely give SC a chance to win the football game on offense. Given that what we know about USC's offense and UCLA's defense being susceptible just as much. Kenny says, who do you consider the biggest rival, UCLA or Notre Dame? I've long thought that they're in the same tier. Depends on the moment. And also, I look at UCLA as the rival for the students. Notre Dame's the rival for the alums. I think that maybe it's changed a little bit, but that's usually the explanation, right?
Yeah.
It's 1A and 1B.
I think that's probably the best way to put it. And when you say students, I think the student athletes apply in that too.
Mm-hmm.
In a year when UCLA is a top 10 team and Notre Dame is a top 25 team, UCLA is the bigger rival.
Yeah. It goes back to the whole John McKay thing, right? Nothing you want more. You don't want to do anything more than beat Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And you do not want to lose to UCLA, because you're going to have to hear it probably, because you probably work with people who root for UCLA or whatever. This
year, for sure, and I think you and I were talking about this earlier today, is if you tell me I have to, USC is going to split those games, pick which way they split it. You absolutely you beat UCLA and you lose to Notre Dame, because if you beat UCLA, you give yourself a chance to go to the Pac-12 title game. Yeah. Like, it shouldn't be a question. You should beat Notre Dame, absolutely. But like, losing to Notre Dame would be a lot less damaging than losing to UCLA.
This is the part where I don't like I like the idea that the Notre Dame rivalry is the greatest intersectional rivalry in sports and all that kind of stuff. I like that. At the same time, I think it absolutely takes away from the game a lot of times in years where
it's not a national title on the line.
Where yes. Like if the playoff is not on the line and SC is more concerned about getting to the Rose Bowl and winning the conference, it's like, if not that you want to, like, you're okay with losing to UCLA, but it's like, it's one of those things where it doesn't ruin your season. And I feel like your rivalry game should always feel like it ruins your season.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't, right? Yeah. Like, and I think that's part of the problem with having the Notre Dame game, outside of the conference there. All right, let's go to a question that we got from Danny. Can we talk about how annoyingly long that game was? It was all the first quarter. It took an hour.
It took so long. And Pac-12 refs are bad. We say this every week. This week, fortunately, there were no big, like, game-changing penalties or game-changing decisions. But, like, the way that they get the calls wrong, that they require a replay review to overturn them every time. The way that there are just penalties on every single other play that just slow down the game. I can't blame them for the drone stoppage, which certainly contributed to how long the first quarter took. So, like, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But it just feels like every call requires a replay to overturn it, and that just takes forever.
You say the game,
it dragged on so long.
It had a tendency to drone on.
It droned on, yes, especially the first quarter. But then once the first quarter happened, it was like the fourth quarter
went quick.
The fourth quarter went quick, yes, but that's because there wasn't like a penalty on every other play. It just And I get the refs don't necessarily control whether or not there are penalties on a play, but like they could also throw a penalty on every play and they choose not to. So I don't know. It just, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, not the quickest game.
No.
Randy says, as good as Caleb Williams is, do you think he would be even better if he just took what the defense gave him instead of always looking to try and make a big play?
So here's the problem. It's arguably, yes, he would be better if he just took what was there. But would he be him if that was the case?
Right.
There's
diminishing returns at some point.
Yeah.
I think the issue that I have with this is the issue of you and I not going to games this year. You're so limited by the broadcast view.
Yeah.
And if we had more access to like all 22 footage or better replays that really showed you what he was looking at, I would have a better opinion about this.
Yeah.
Because so many of the times, tonight against Colorado, it looked like he was just, scrambling around, waiting for something to develop, and you're like, okay, is there just nothing there?
Yeah,
I don't know because we can't see it.
Yeah, we have no idea because all of USC's routes are 10 yards down the field, and so we can't see, and we don't get a good replay that shows us whether or not there was somebody open or not.
Yeah. So I like the spirit of the question, and I think that you're right. That if he just took the safer options, did the Cody Kessler thing, he could be super efficient that way. Cody Kessler was super efficient in 2014 when he did that. At the same time, taking risks is sort of what makes him, him. So.
Well, and that's the other thing is I was looking for those check down options and I didn't see them until Travis Dye got injured, and then the running backs were the check down options. I agree with Bennett in the chat who said there isn't diminishing returns if he took what they gave. It actually opens up the big play more if he took check downs. And I agree with that on the one layer, which is if you take the check downs, you pull the defense forward and open up the long plays later on. But also, we saw in this game, when you have athletes like Taj Washington and Raleek Brown, and even Kyle Ford, and we've seen Michael Jackson break plays, and we've seen Karen Hudson be available and all that kind of stuff. When you have players like that, get the ball in their hands short and let them make a play. Taj Washington just made dudes miss by being fast. So I would like to see USC do more of that. That's one thing that for better, but again, there are also always worse elements to this, right? Because how many times did we scream at Lane Kiffin to stop throwing the damn bubble screen? Because it was like, the bubble screen isn't working, but you're depending on your athlete to make a man miss. You don't always want to have to make a man miss, but there's a balance somewhere in there. And I don't know that USC has found it yet.
Yeah. I still think there's areas in which SC can continue to get better. And one of the things is maybe the quicker passing game.
Yeah.
If you are not feeling confident about the offensive line and you want to speed things up for Caleb Williams, then go to the sort of quicker passing game, maybe more RPOs where the decision is something he has to make in the first split second rather than, having the luxury to actually go through all of his progressions if he's going to have the tendency of waiting a little bit too much there. So, let's go to a question we got from Danny. Do the equipment managers always wear green, or was that just for the vets? I think that was for the Veterans Day stuff.
Can we talk? Can we talk about the Veterans Day stuff?
Yeah. What's your thought?
The tweet that USC sent out with the warm-ups, the camo warm-ups, with the numbers on it.
You thought they were jerseys?
The close-up of the 13 shirt had me just almost sent me to ICU. Like, it almost sent me with a heart attack. I was like, what?
You guys want throwbacks? No,
let's get you all camo jerseys. Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that they were wearing camo for or green for Veterans Day and all that kind of stuff, which I like. I think that if you're going to be USC and you're going to keep your jersey combinations traditional, I think you do have to get a little bit more creative and get a little more crazy with like your warm-ups and your sideline stuff and all that kind of stuff. So like I support that. That's cool.
It's the same thing the NHL does, where in warm-ups they get all crazy, and that's where you see them wear the BS, like the ugly Dodger stuff and all of that whatnot.
But I would
wear it in warm-ups.
But I would support. Well, I wouldn't necessarily support camo jerseys. In part too, because it's not quite stolen valor, but like it's cool when Army wears camo. Like I don't know that USC's players need to be wearing camo on their have camo uniforms for Veterans Day. Like there are probably better ways
there's nothing thematic about it.
Yes. But I will say, like, I fully support alternates. I fully support the idea of doing throwbacks. So USC throwbacks. People seem to want them too.
Maybe throwbacks for next week. Who knows?
Throwbacks for Notre Dame?
There you go.
No throwbacks for next week because USC UCLA uniform goodness should be sacred. Like homes on homes.
Last time SC wore throwbacks against Notre Dame, they lost. So maybe that don't want to do the throwbacks against Notre Dame.
But definitely don't do it against UCLA because UCLA USC home on home is a beautiful spectacle, and I would be very upset if
just to let you know, the throwbacks are the same color.
I know, but I want like current home. Like I like that personally.
Okay, Josh says, do you think UCLA gets caught looking forward tomorrow? They play Arizona.
I don't think they get caught in the sense that like they lose. I do think Arizona is going to be able to do something similar to UCLA that they did to USC. Also similar to what ASU did to UCLA last week, too. Mm-hmm. Arizona has a very good offense. Jaden DeLaura is a good quarterback. They have receivers who we just saw can make really good plays. Yeah. I think that UCLA's defense is a vulnerable defense. I think my prediction is that UCLA will be ahead by 10 points or more for the majority of that game, but never by more than like 2 touchdowns. It'll never be an entirely comfortable kind of game for them.
Yeah.
Arizona will continue to score.
And they win like 38-24
yeah,
something like
that.
Yeah,
exactly. Something like that.
Yeah. I could see that. I could see that for sure. I think they end up taking care of business. Mostly because the world needs a SC-UCLA game with both teams coming in with one loss.
It does.
That's what is needed.
Yeah.
Big T37, is Dennis Lynch still undefeated with the pregame drip?
I didn't see his pregame drip.
He had the glasses, the shades.
I saw some really nice pregame drip from others, but I don't think I saw Dennis Lynch.
Can you say that again?
Pre-game drip.
Dave the Greater says, Alicia, did that glass start as full at the beginning of the show?
Okay. Some story time. I was working at the start of the game, so I did not pour a glass of wine or any alcohol because I was working. But at the first opportunity, because of the way that first quarter went, I took the bottle of wine that I had opened a day ago, and I had my little I have a vacuum bin that I sort of saved my bottle of wine with, and I poured a glass of wine because I was like, I need to chill. And before the show started, I asked Michael, would you be comfortable if I had another glass of wine while we're recording the show? And he said yes. So I poured a second. This is I think it's like a second and a half glass.
Second and a half?
It's a Sangiovese. I don't remember the label. But it's very good. I don't tend to like Italian wines, and I very much like this one. So
I don't like Italian wines either. I don't like American wines, French wines, Chilean wines.
I like Spanish wines. And Argentinian wines. I've discovered I very much like a spicy wine, which is funny because I don't like spicy food. No, wine is amazing.
No, all wines are.
I love it. And I've recently gotten into like champagne, which is weird because I never really liked champagne, but my brother got really into it and he sort of dragged me along. And now I really, really enjoy a glass of champagne too. So, yeah.
Jessica says, what do you think about all the guys rallying around Dye when he was hurt? It says a lot about him as a teammate. I think the biggest thing for me is it says about him as a teammate as a transfer,
Yes.
in which he's only played 9 games.
Yes.
He will only ever play 9.5 games for USC, and yet I think people will remember him more fondly and more as a true Trojan than like 90% of guys that you could think of.
He is the offense's version of Stevie to Kolobatu.
Yes.
In the sense that like it was just a player who came in and
counterpoint though.
No?
I'm with you.
Okay.
But the difference is I don't think there's a world in which Stevie T ever leads the team out of the tunnel. I think there's absolutely a world where like next year Travis dies on a bye week and he's leading the team at the tunnel.
No, I would love to see Stevie T lead USC out of the tunnel.
I'm not saying that I wouldn't want to see that. I'm saying I just can't see that happening.
I would love it. But yes, you're probably right. Well, running backs in general are more of a forefront position than like a defensive tackle. But yeah. And the mustache game and like that kind of like he's more vocal kind of guy than CBT was. So I get that. But no, I think that was a terrible situation, but heartwarming to see the impact that he's had on this locker room and the way that they responded to him. And like what really stuck with me is the way that guys weren't just going up and like patting him on the shoulder pads. Like they were going up and talking to him and having a moment with him. And like, you could see how important that was for him.
Yeah. And the opposing players too. Like,
yeah, like it was just,
he's a dude that like,
he commands respect from everybody around him.
Yeah. And he's in the last 5 years, he's been one of the, premier players of the conference and like one of the most respected players in the conference. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Lamont says, what do you think of the Brady Quinn comments at halftime about SC sort of being overrated?
My problem with the SC is overrated talk is that I think it's misplaced. I think that there's a very good argument to say that UCLA is underrated or that other teams are underrated. But the problem is that if you look at everybody from sort of 7 to 12, separating them is very difficult. And it depends on what you're going to default to. And I think that I understand voters and committee members if they are looking at it and saying, how do we differentiate between any of these teams? Well, one of these teams has Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley, who is an actual proven like playoff head coach recently. And one of these teams is DTR, who's very good, but like people have more of a history with as being like the Bo Nix of like good but never great. I think DTR is great this season, but I think he also brings some baggage with him. Chip Kelly brings baggage with him. So like I understand why you would default to trusting Lincoln Riley a little bit more and then the flash of like Patrick Mahomes reincarnated when you look at Caleb Williams. Like I get it. Would I be upset if UCLA was ahead of USC? I wouldn't. But I think it's misplaced to say that USC is overrated here, especially when the argument is like, well, UCLA beat Utah, but USC lost to Utah. Well, it's like, would UCLA have beaten Utah if they had played them in Salt Lake City? And would USC have lost to Utah if they had played them at the Coliseum? Like, that's not a valid argument to me, especially because USC lost by 1 point on a 2-point conversion in a game where there were legitimately questionable calls, like blah, 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 all of that. It's a futile argument. He's on TV, so he has to make it. I'm as somebody in the field who has to make arguments for and against teams and players because it's my job to do so. I am sympathetic to just needing to make the argument, but at the same time, like, I don't think it's worth getting riled up one way or the other because, as Petros Papadakis said, if only there was a way that we could settle this on the field.
Well, yes.
That happens next week.
Yes. Okay. Two things can be true here. I think one, UCLA is underrated.
Yes.
I do think that SC has gotten the benefit of the doubt that they probably don't deserve. But like it all comes down to they play next week, so why are we worrying about it? And
I don't think UCLA has a harder path to the playoff than USC because of where they're starting. Because if UCLA beats USC and then goes to the Pac-12 title game and does the thing that we're talking about with USC all the time, they won't get left out if they're a one-loss Pac-12 champion. They just won't.
UCLA has the benefit of, if they get a rematch with Oregon, they can do the whole like revenge their loss thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it doesn't matter. They're going to meet next week and play each other. So it'll be fine in that sense. But it was expected that Brady Quinn would be making the argument.
Yeah.
But I realistically, I think that it's totally fine to say SC's overrated right now. I don't think there's a big deal about that.
Yeah.
Josh says, do you see SC stepping up to play hard for Dye? Absolutely. They talked about it in the, just skimming through Twitter here while we've been on. All the quotes have been players talking about, how important it is to fight for him and everything. Now, brings up the question of Ewing theory. Will SC sort of without Travis Dye play, within the running game, maybe play above the loss there of Travis Dye? Like, will Austin Jones end up getting, playing beyond his means, maybe?
Well, and like we talked about earlier, will it make a more sensible use of the other running backs in the passing game? And also, will it lend itself to USC's insistence on passing the ball anyways, because now Travis Dye isn't there. So maybe I tend to think that USC will be a weaker offense because they don't have Travis Dye. That's the respect I have for Travis Dye, but you can certainly have players step up, and that's the plus side, is that it's not like USC didn't have anybody else at running back to step up. They're just not as good as Travis Dye, but that doesn't mean there aren't sufficient to be part of a really good offense.
Yeah. Randy says, can you see Travis Dye coming back to be the part of the coaching staff after his playing days are done? Yeah, I could also see him as a guy who like somehow is in the NFL forever.
If this is like this is weird to say, but this is, if it's like a break, if he had just a fracture as opposed to like an ACL tear or something like that, it might benefit him in the long run because coming back from that is just more basic. Travis Dye to me feels like a guy who can be in the NFL for years. Whether as a featured back, I don't know. Maybe he has that skill set, maybe. But
hopefully I can see him, an injury that's not long term.
He's not somebody. He's somebody who brings the right mindset to the game, who has a good skill set, whose vision is very exceptional. His vision is better than any of his physical traits.
Yeah.
So he could, at very least, I think, carve out a role for himself as a backup running back, and in the NFL, and have a very long, decade-long career, and then go into TV or something like that. Yeah.
I could see it. Dave the Greater says, will you have your friend Jake on this week? Will we have our friend Jake on this week? Yes,
that's
we are going to have Jake on this week. We need to
figure out the camera thing,
lock down the specifics of what we're doing. But yes, Jake will be on this week, and we will be on the What's Bruin show as well. So stay tuned for details on that. We'll probably have details on Monday about what's coming up later this week in that aspect. Okay, last two questions here. First one, Cameron says, if you stack two bad officiating calls in a game, is it two bad calls or one big bad call?
It's two bad calls, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, as the Pac-12 refs.
To me, it depends. Does it need to be reviewed? Because then it could just be like one big bad review.
Yeah. Well, remember that Oregon game years ago where they reviewed the play? I think it was a touchdown in the end zone or something like that. They reviewed it, and then they reviewed it again. Like, was that 2 reviews, or was that one big, long, stupid 15-minute review?
Are you talking about 2006?
It might have been. It was wild. It was a while ago where they reviewed it, but then they reviewed it again.
They reviewed the review.
Yeah, they reviewed the review. Yeah.
So what had happened was there was a play where I want to say the guy went out of bounds. They came back in, and it was about whether or not he was tipped. Because
I think they were checking if it was tipped in the first place, and then they were like called attention to the fact that but did he step out of bounds first? And
no, I think it was the other way around. The other way around, And there's a classic. This is 2006 SC Oregon game. Classic.
I just remember it took like
shot
20 minutes
of Pete Carroll looking across at Mike Bellotti, just like F you, F you, F you, F you. Just, it's brilliant. It's a great moment of sports cinema.
Speaking of stacking things,
well, we got a question from Rama Murdy. This is the final question of the Carcast.
Okay.
Will there be several stacked lasagnas for next week's game? I think we need to get some lasagna this week.
Okay, we screwed up.
Yeah, we went to the store, and first of all, we of course we do all of our grocery shopping online and then pick it up because who the hell wants to walk into the grocery store? Not me. And of course, I ask you what you want, and you're like, I'm like, you realize this is like for the next week, and you're like, and then 2 days later, you're like, well, we don't have this. And I'm like, well, I gave you the option to what you wanted. You didn't say anything, but no counseling, no couples therapy here. The point is, we need to get lasagna this week at some point.
Yeah. So, we even got reminded earlier today, very generously, like that we should put our lasagna in the oven. And I felt like so mad because it was like, we don't have lasagna. And like, that's our fault. Like, that's like, what did we do? Like, we made a mistake. Like, we had the opportunity to have lasagna for dinner tonight. And we just messed up, and I feel bad. But I would like to call attention to the robots here.
Yes,
we've been talking about this for 2 weeks now, guys. Do you see this? Do you see it? Do you see it? No one noticed it. No one noticed the box of lasagna that we stuck behind me on my little table there. We put that there 2 weeks ago. We thought we would get immediately like, is that a lasagna box? Stouffer's lasagna? It's there. It's been there. And no one's brought it up. And we are so disappointed in all of you.
People listening on Apple Podcasts are like, what's going on?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
So on over my left shoulder is the table that houses my PS5, and on top of that, I've got a whole bunch of little like knickknacks. I've got a USC pillow thing. I've got a penguin. I've got an Anfield Road sign. I've got a thing that my brother picked up for me in Pompeii. That's like a Roman helmet kind of thing, and the hat my hiking hat that I wore for a year it was a USC cap that I wore hiking for a year while I was preparing to do Half Dome. And then I retired after Half Dome, after I completed the Half Dome hike. So that's my retired hiking hat and this whole thing. And I threw the lasagna box on there 2 weeks ago after we ate it. No one noticed it. And I'm very sad.
Absolutely missed out. So, all right, we'll be back Monday. Everybody has all of the weekend.
Steve Curry was the one who told us to put our lasagna in our oven.
Yeah, our good buddy Steve in the Bay Area.
And we screwed up and didn't have lasagna. So
we'll have lasagna at some point.
Number one, Josh in the chat. Number one, Josh. Happy anniversary. We are so happy for you and your wife on your anniversary. Kudos to you guys. Awesome. 14 years is a long, long time. As people who are in their first year of marriage. Long, long time. Number two, Josh, it's my fault. It's literally my fault. Because Michael put together the letter.
It's literally here. She has to find the sticker.
Sending
so
to you.
Blame her.
The box of stickers is in the closet. I just haven't dug through the closet to find it. It's my fault. I'm sorry.
We'll get it to you, Josh. All right. We will be back Monday to talk more about SC in Colorado. And everyone has the whole weekend have fun. We'll be back Monday. Outline more of our week for the rivalry week when we'll talk to Jake and so much more. As always, be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, all of that if you're listening there. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Like the stream here on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe. Helps grow the show and so much more. Alicia, final word? Anything? Final word?
The final word is Jessie. Because I want to bring up that we are going to debut Jessie, our dog, our beautiful border collie at some point. But Jessie could not be debuted tonight because this game was so long that by the start of the fourth quarter, Jessie had put herself in her crate to go to sleep.
Next week, there's a very good likelihood that the UCLA game will be the time that we can debut Jessie, because
it won't be so late that she has already put herself away to go to sleep.
Potentially.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We will be back Monday. Until then, see ya.
See ya.